In this video, I'm going to go through YTSS Prelim 2022, Q10. This is a database question. So the way I set this question is that I try to give you a lot of context, and I am going to present to you some data in a graphical form to see whether you can pick out the right type of information and use it to answer some science or physics related question. So there's not much hard or deep analysis here. It is basically like a comprehension in English, but just that the information is presented to you in a graphical manner or embedded all over the place. So here I give you an example of my vacuum cleaner. So I realized that to detect the distance in the market, the vacuum cleaner basically use either ultrasonic sensor and IR sensor. So these data are actually not make-up data, but it's actually taken from a real engineering journal. So I begin with a chunk of things to start the context, but most of the information is actually from this graph. So you will see that in my video, a lot of time I need to refer to this graph. Okay, now in part A, I'm asking you about the differences between ultrasound and infrared radiation. And many of you who didn't get the mark because you are stating the frequency or the wavelength. Now I know that it is true in a certain sense that they will have very likely different wavelength or frequency. However, in a database question, most of the answer need to be either supported by content knowledge or if not, data from the question. And in my entire question, I basically give you zero knowledge about frequency and wavelength. And for ultrasound, it is, some of you thought that ultrasound can only take a frequency of more than 20 kilohertz, right? Because human can only hear it up to 20 kilohertz. However, ultrasound has a range. So as long as the frequency is more than 20 kilohertz, it is considered as ultrasound, and that frequency can coincide with the frequency of infrared radiation. So because of that, wavelength and frequency will not be accepted in this question. What we are trying to look for is for students to identify that they are basically very different types of wave. So for ultrasound, it is a type of sound wave, so it is longitudinal. Then for IR, it is transverse wave. Or you can tell me that IR don't need a medium, but sound in general, including ultrasound, requires a medium. So that's your part A. In part B, I'm trying to check whether you can recall what actually affect accuracy. So before you can answer this question correctly, you need to have the content knowledge that accuracy basically is a measure of measure value versus actual value. So if your measure value and your actual value are very close, we say that this equipment is very accurate. So most of you who didn't get the mark because you state that, the line is linear or the line is directly proportional. So it has nothing to do with relationship, right? It has to do with deviation, right? Whether your measured value and your actual value are close. So because of that, for your part B, I only accept answer that tells me that, because in your, I believe is IR, is it IR? Because of ultrasound, the actual value and the measured value are very close. Therefore, it is more accurate than infrared sensor, right? Or you can tell me that the ultrasonic deviation is actually very little, which means that your measured value minus your actual value is almost to zero. Yep. So that's your part B. For part C, I add a little bit more content. Basically, I am telling you that the average distance between the floor and the sensor is given by this parameter, and that in the program, if you add 20 cm to the average distance, my program is going to stop the vacuum cleaner from moving. And in part I, I'm asking you why robot B is not working, and robot B is using IR sensor. So in your mind, you should have identified that basically the question is telling you that, okay, for this robot, I have a working range that is 2 to 20 cm, and that my program will basically stop the robot once the sensor tells me that, I'm detecting a 40 cm. So because of that, if you look at your robot B, which uses infrared sensor, so infrared sensor is given by the green part over here. So if you look at the range, when your actual distance is between 10 to 20, what happens is that the sensor will measure it as 80 cm. So even though there is no actual drop, the sensor will actually make a false measurement and tell the robot that, oh, you know, now you are having a distance of 80 cm and it is dangerous, you should stop it. So because of that, I'm looking out for answers that tell me that, oh, for your IR sensor, even though the actual distance is between 2 to 20 cm, the IR sensor will feedback a measured distance of 80 cm, and hence the program will actually trigger it to stop, and therefore robot B will not work. Some of you lose some mark because you are telling me that, oh, when the actual distance is 0 cm. No, the actual distance will never be 0 cm because there's always a gap between the sensor and the floor. Then some of you are telling me that, oh, when the actual distance is 20 cm, my measured value is 80 and therefore it stops. No, you will still lose some mark because I have a range from 2 to 20. It's not just 20 cm only. So when you are answering database question, you need to be very mindful. Are you working with a range or are you working with one instance of a certain distance? Yeah, so that is your part 1. Now part 2, what it's trying to say is that it is Mia actually increase the diameter of this wheel. So when the wheel is being enlarged, what happens is that the sensor will get lifted up the ground by even greater height. So now your condition has changed, right? Your working range is now increased from 2 to 20 to 30 to 40, and as a result, your program, because you decided that 20 cm drop is dangerous, right? So now your stop trigger has changed to 60 cm, and they are asking you, why is there a problem? So you need to tell me what exactly is the problem. Don't just describe to me how the robot will function and all that. Tell me what is the problem, right? So again, we need to look at the IR sensor because that is our robot B, and we are looking at a working range of 30 to 40. So now if I look at 30 to 40, right, you can see that my IR sensor would give me a measured distance of 20, and 20 is below the trigger condition. So what happened is that in normal working condition, the robot B is going to move. So it's not about that. Then how about when it is in the danger zone? The danger zone is over here, right? When there's a drop of more than 20 cm. So when I have a danger zone, I would expect the IR sensor to give me a warning and then my program is going to stop it. However, you can see that at this point, my IR sensor is going to give me a measured distance that is below 60, and if it is below 60, my program will not trigger my robot to stop. So even though there is a drop that is more than 20 cm from the normal working distance, my sensor will not be able to detect that drop, and as a result, my program will not react and my robot is going to fall and damage itself. So what is the problem? The problem would be when there is a drop of 20 cm, the IR sensor will not be able to detect it because it is going to measure it as below 60 cm difference, and hence the problem will be my robot will not stop and it will fall and it will damage itself. So that is the answer that I'm looking for, right? First, tell me that it cannot detect and what is the problem. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not sure if you know. If you go to my OneNote, if you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to find the full answer key over there. Okay, now let's move on to part D. So for part D, I'm checking whether you have studied your power rating, whether you truly understand it. So first of all, I'm asking you how much energy is stored in the battery. So in the battery, I expect you all to know that the battery is inside the vacuum cleaner. And I'm telling you that the vacuum cleaner can actually operate for 120 minutes. And I tell you the power. So with power and the time, basically you can work out the amount of energy that is stored in the battery. Now, you need to use this equation, power equals to energy over time, and you need to remember to turn the unit of time into SI unit. And if you do so correctly, you'll be able to work out that the energy is about 250,000 joules. Then next, I'm asking you how much time is needed to recharge my battery. A lot of you are facing difficulty here because you need to recognize one thing first. That is, the amount of energy that is stored in the battery comes from the charging dot. And I'm telling you that there's an efficiency, meaning that when the energy in the battery is obtained from the charging dot, if the charging dot gives 100 joules to the battery will not receive the full 100 joules, right? There is an efficiency difference. So if the charging station is trying to give 100 joules to the battery, only 80% of that 100 joules is going to go to the battery. So now you need to know this thing, that if I want my battery to receive 250,000 joules, then my charging dot need to give a certain amount of energy, but this amount of energy will not be 100% transfer. Only 80% of it will goes to the battery, right? So now from this energy, I want to find the time. So I need to make use of the equation power equals to energy over time, and if I make energy the subject, I will have PT. So now with this, I would have PT, then multiply by 80%, 250,000. Now this is from the charging dot. So I need to refer to my label. My charging dot doesn't have the power given to me, but instead they gave me the voltage and the current. So meaning that I need to go and work out my power through this formula, P equals to VI, and you can work out the power as this. So now you bring it back down here, you will have 20 times 1.2 multiplied by the time, don't forget the time, right? And then you multiply by 80%, which is equals to 250,000, and you can work out what is the time over here. You can leave it in seconds, remember 2SF. Okay, again, if you do not understand certain thing, please quickly clarify with me. Send me WhatsApp or post it on the Padlet, or just make an appointment.